Yo gamers, what's up? It's your boy GoldDemon 12 back with another Honkai Star Rail video. Today's video, I want to go over something that I've seen a couple other content creators mention specifically, and I do think it's something worth talking about, as well as, listen, y'all know it's a classic of my channel. I just have problems with uploading, and so I figured might as well get a video out that I think could be worthwhile. And this video is not actually the Honkai tier list video that I do have planned to do. Again, with Genshin Honkai releasing, at least like 3 characters in update right now, on top of what I have to do normally, it's a lot, so I don't know when I could say those will even come out. That being said, this video today we are talking about power creep, right? In the sense that Honkai has had a pretty continuous power creep since launch, and I don't think it's going to continue, right? I'm not saying it shouldn't continue. However, personally, I think it should slow down, uh, like currently, because it's been completely absurd. But the point of this video is to talk about power creep, the potential issues power creep can have in the game, and characters going forward, basically, right? Not gonna go into leaks. Just keep that in mind. I may nod at it a little bit, but we're not gonna talk about that in this video, as that's just not. It's not important. Well, it's important, but not what I'm trying to. Not the main focus of what I'm trying to discuss here. So, I'm using tier list as an example here because you can find this stuff on YouTube, on just Google, like TikTok, like whatever social media you use, or whatever site you use. It's all over the place. How strong a unit is. So, in case you are completely oblivious to what power creep is, or are completely oblivious to the state of Honkai Star Rail, is that there has been a continuous power creep with every DPS release. Now, some people are going to argue about Zila and Jingliu all day, every day, but at the end of the day, the performance shows that both units are strong, but that every new DPS has basically been better, right? And I bring this to conversation because of how potent the most recent 2 DPS characters are, that being Embittered Lune and Jingliu, right? Why does this matter and why is it important? Well, first off, it matters for all the base characters, right? And it's important because it's going to affect the people who summon for the characters and why you would want to summon for those characters, right? Is it worth summoning for Jingliu now if there's someone's going to be better in the future? I don't know, right? I'm going to say yes, because as I said earlier, I don't think Jingliu is going to be power crept anytime soon, right? And so not to get into any debate over who's better, Jingliu or Embittered Lune, I've said many times on stream before she came out that I think she is equal to or slightly below, but it is basically tied for #1, right? After she's come out, you can easily argue her to be better. You can argue her to be worse. Again, I would say they are the king and queen of this game, undisputed. They are both #1 without question, right? The other DPSs that have released before them, right? Start in order. We have Zila, who's very strong, has a couple of, interesting things of being single target DPS, and the fact that she can't get half her buff in certain stages, but again, great initial release to start, that's really strong, gets players to summon, right? Jingliu, who many people call mid-1, however, he's not really, bad. He's not bad. He can perform. I've seen him zero cycle Memory of Chaos before. He can do it, right? Does he need help? I would say yes, because I've mentioned in one of my videos before that he doesn't have the best supports for what he wants to do, right? There's no one that specifically buffs follow-up attacks, right? There's general supports, but a lot of times you have to spend more SP to get him to do his the most damage he can do because of how his lightning ward works, being not his turn, right? And so a buff will oftentimes fall off if it's not active while the lightning lord goes, for example, right? But he's competitive, right? Then they release Kafka, who has multiple builds, albeit Crit Kafka is just Copium. And then you have the DOT Kafka, which requires you to build sort of a dual DPS setup, or, it's generally a different setup than normal. You're playing around with DOT, and all that stuff. Like, again, there's a variety you can do with builds and characters that are released with Luca as well being a new DOT support. We're getting a new one in a couple days, not a couple days, I think like 2 weeks at this point. And so that's going to buff Kafka, or at least give her more options for element advantage, right? Then they released Blade, who again was really strong, has a lot of potential, and then proceeded to the next update, receive multiple buffs with Lynx and other characters, right? He was really strong. And then 1.3 comes around. They release Imbibitor Lune, who is so insanely broken, he is an S tier in literally every single person's tier list, right? I bring up these tier lists because I just want to show you that everyone agrees that these characters, right, are just strong, have just been getting stronger, right? They just keep releasing more and more powerful characters, right? We've hardly had any supports released. We've had, again, Silver Wolf. That's 1 debuff per character. Awesome. We've had Luocha, Fushuan, and Lynx. 3 sustained characters. Awesome. That's it. Every other character has been a DPS, right? Which is interesting to see because are they going to power creep further? I don't think they are, because I've mentioned it earlier, and again, where I just clicked on all these, like, I just searched up Honkai Star Rail tier list, clicked on some links, found it. I think these 2 websites are duplicates or even AI, because it says we added 300 characters. There's not 300 characters in the game, but point is, are they going to continue power creep? I actually don't think so. I think part of the reason why these characters were released this strong was for multiple reasons. One, Zila being a strong DPS at the launch of the game is perfect for sales because people are going to spend money. They're like, look at this crazy unit, she can do so much damage, blah, blah, blah. It's going to sell, right? You release Jingliu, who's another key part of the story, who is good at damage, it's going to sell, right? And then the next update, what do you release? You release a support that goes along with one of the waifu characters, and another support, Luocha, who's in the story, right? They're strong. People are going to go crazy about that. Hype starts to die down, right? As we go into 1.2, right? They release the 2 other Celeron hunters, Blade and Kafka, who are both strong in their own right? Kafka, right, has to build everything around her DOT, but she was hyped up because it's Kafka, right? The mommy factor, right? Blade, who's an edgy guy who seems really strong, obviously hyped up because he's Stellaron Hunter. We saw him a little bit. He's mysterious, so people want to summon for him, right? Then 1.3 comes around, right? Obviously, the game's going to drop a little bit. However, the announcement of the 1.4 PlayStation release, right? And then, boom, we're smacked in the face with the strongest DPS in the game without question. People go crazy because how OP he is and how free and easy he completely destroys all the content. There's new in-game content of Storm Universe. It's crazy. And then they release Fushuan, who's also insanely OP in her own right, who's a defensive unit, right? Guess what? The next update, the PlayStation 5 releases. What are they going to do? Drop a terrible DPS? No, why would they do that? What would make money? So they buff Jingliu and then make her the same level as Dan. It makes sense for the money. Now going forward, it would make sense for them to release more strong units. However, I don't think they're going to power creep the current ones, because then people are going to be upset and probably quit the game. Again, not everyone's going to quit. Whales are still going to want to summon for the new powerful unit, but also I see no benefit to them releasing more powerful units, especially when we need support characters, right? We're very limited on supports. Most people only have the free-to-play supports, being that they'll have their Yukong, they'll have their Asta, and they may have a Ting Yun if they picked her up from one of the really good high-value banners, or a Pella. They don't have anybody else. And so they can't do what most teams in this game do. Double offensive supports, right? They can't do it. If they went someone for Kafka, yeah, they'll have a Kafka team because they most likely have Sampo, or at least a Luca, who, while it won't perform as good as Sampo, will still help Kafka with her main damage. And so you can actually have 2 teams. But a lot of people don't even have that opportunity. Why? Well, it's because we have only had 2 5-stars, and one of them's an off rate, and then the other one has only been here once, and that was 2 updates ago, right? So, 1, we need more supports. So I don't think they're going to power creep DPS characters. 2, I see no reason for them to power creep DPS characters when we don't have a limited, like how do I explain this? I see no reason for them to do it, because people are just going to want, like, not... there's certain people that aren't going to summon anymore, right? I genuinely think that for them, it's probably more of a profit loss if they keep trying to power creep, especially with a very free to play friendly game and without it being hyper competitive, right? It's not PvP. They're most likely not going to introduce PvP into the game. Of course, Pride One that I have up on the screen here has their PvP simulation, which is just comparing a memory of chaos runs. But I just don't see a reason for them to power creep anymore. Like what is the purpose when we don't even have supports, right? And so does it make sense. There is a gap between the two best DPSs and everyone else, but just it is what it is, you know. And despite what websites having, you know, just bad info, pretty much everyone across the board agrees that those are the best characters. Herta's the worst, etc., etc. Like it just it is what it is, right? And so why is this important for the future of the game? Well, I said earlier, I don't think they're going to release anyone better than what we already have in terms of power creep, right? I don't think it's going to happen for the DPS characters. And the supports, well, we need to fill out room, right? What is going to bring people's favorite characters up into being viable, right? People are going to want to summon on that because they like a specific character. Or it's because, you know, there's a waifu factor with a specific character, right? Again, that could be anything. We don't know yet because it's not in the live game, but there are many ways for them to continue releasing pretty good units, or maybe even release multiple sets of units they want to use together for them to make their maximum output, so they'll make more money at the end of the day, right? It's all about money. Personally, I don't think power creep is that much of a problem. I do think it's going to slow down just because, to me, like they release the game, release it again with strong releases, and then plateau, right? Because if they were to have people regret any decision in the game, well, they're not going to want to summon anymore, right? Like it's just it's a money thing. As well as I think the game does need more support characters for various reasons. As I said, Jing Wong is iffy with the current support characters. Other characters like I don't know, Sashang. I can only really think of Sashang, who get a lot of turns in, right? They want to use buffers that will either return skill points so you can keep your other buffers active, or have some like debuffer so it's not their based on their turns so that eats up all the stacks or something like that. Like again, there's many ways for them to expand on gameplay, where it be relic sets, you know, planar ornaments, you know, our new characters. And I genuinely like don't see power creep continuing much further, right? I also don't think it's necessarily bad for the game. I do think it will suck, being that if there is newer forms of content, that a lot of characters will probably just be unusable. But this game has so many like complex strategies and like niche setups that you can do that I don't think that's really an issue at the end of the day. Is that the players, even free to play, can zero cycle MOC. They can even beat the hardest content, right? It requires more game knowledge in order to beat it. And so I don't think power creep is really much of an issue. Yeah, and I don't know. That's just sort of, I'm kind of all over the place with this video, just because like power creep and how it applies to the game is a very complex issue. Because there's even the developer side of it. Is that how do the developers want to address this issue going forward? As I said, I don't think they're going to really address it. They're just going to halt power creep for the time being. You know, I don't think in the next 3, you know, updates we're going to see anyone surpass Jingliu or Dan Heng, right? Unless they, you know, do a 180 and buff up some upcoming leaked character. But I genuinely don't think it's going to be like that. I think they're going to release more supports that's just going to enhance what we already have, right? Because again, we've had 1 damage buffing support so far. I don't count Luca because obviously he's just a DOT for Kafka to be enabled, right? And so it's just like that. And sure, some people are gonna be like, oh, Fushuan technically buffs your damage, and sure, Lynx technically buffs your damage, but that's a setup thing, right? As I said, there's a lot of complexity there. So yeah, and I guess that's really it. I don't know, like it's hard to say because you see power creep in so many other games. Like if I play other gachas like Dokkan and Legends, and they have a continuous power creep going on. You know, for the new releases, you know, they're one of them's turn-based, the other one's like live, like, I guess like live fighting. And they have continuous power creep, but like Dokkan is a PvE game, just like Honkai, and they release harder content regularly. Legends is a PvE and PvP game. They release new units that you can use in PvP, be better than the other person, and in PvE, right? And so I think we will get better units eventually. I just think it's going to halt, and I don't really see it being past this bar of power, unless, of course, they release new content, and then people are going to want to summon for that, right? Does this make your current summons worthless? I would say no. At least if you summon for Dan or Jingliu. If you summon for the other characters, debatable. I think Kafka has as many issues as Jing Wang does with supporters and viability. But right now it's just apparent that there is a gap between Dan, Jingliu, and the rest of the game, right? And so, yeah, that's just sort of what it is. I think, is that everything I covered in this? I haven't covered leaks because that's not relevant to this video. I don't know, I guess I'll throw one more thing in. I'll throw in this. Who do I think's gonna get power crept out of the game? Right? This one's gonna be a hot take. So I predicted early on in the game that Himiko, Clara, and Hook are gonna be completely power crept out of existence, right? And guess what? I was right. It was very obvious because, and again, I've played beta, which a lot of people don't know, but I played back in closed beta test 2. I didn't play closed beta test 3. I didn't get in. But I knew how the state of the game was at that time. They changed a lot. Good things. They changed a lot for the better. But for my main point is, there are certain characters that I think will become progressively more worthless going forward, and this is a result of power creep. And to start with the sustained characters, I genuinely think the only one here is March 7th. Right now, to me, March 7th is the worst sustain unit. I don't even think this list is fair. I actually think you can bump, like, I think you can bump MC Natasha up to Bilo tier, and they, for Pride Wind's sake, did they change it? No, they don't change it. I actually think MC is pretty good. However, MC cannot solo sustain, which I can understand if you want to put MC lower. But I genuinely think MC is actually underrated. Natasha is not that bad. Yeah, Lynx is pretty much a straight upgrade for most teams, but like it's genuinely like it's not that crazy, you know. I do think March is gonna be the worst throughout the board. This will change based on like the whole fall of attack as an archetype as a team, right? I know Topaz will have synergy with this, but it's very specific in how it functions, and so I'm not really sure March has any future going forward. Every other defense character is fine. MC, I just think is underrated. If anything, I think Japard's probably going to be the one to get power crept into lower tiers because of how he functions with his shield, having no CC, and while he can solo sustain, I do think at some point his shield will not be enough for the damage we take, and so we're going to either want to run a dual defense setup or a completely new 5-star shielder. Plus, what some of the other healers do with cleanses and other buffs, I just think are better than what Japard provides. The one thing that will help him though is depending on how strong freeze can be as an effect on enemies. We'll see how that plays out with other future characters, but I think Japard's my prediction for getting dropped on any of these tier lists. And I'll just say, I don't know if I say it already, I think every single one of these I pulled up as hot garbage, and in some cases like Genshin Lab, granted, their Honkai one is better than their Genshin one, I think are complete misinformation and are a complete joke. Do not look at any of these. They're all hot garbage. As for Pride One is actually really good. They explain their stuff. And I think this is a genuinely helpful resource for you trying to learn stuff in the game. But yeah, back to being power creeped. Yeah, so in terms of how they have their by the way, full disclosure, I'm not sponsored. I just think their resource is actually really solid in comparison to everything else. I've not seen anything nearly as good as a website, except for like I think Project Yata and Honey Hunter. But those are databases. They're not like actual like informational websites, right? But again, I'm just going off this because it's a nice format. Going in the buffers, I actually think that Yukong's underrated and we'll see more play in the future in either a full Harmony DPS setup or a sub DPS setup with specific characters, right? I actually do think she's pretty solid. I don't, I can't really say Asta is like above her. I know there is some speed gimmicky and some like, niche up stuff. And again, this game has a lot of stuff going for it, but I mean, it really depends. I don't think Ting Yun and Bronya is ever going to get power crept. I'll be honest. Ting Yun provides way too much to be power crept for most DPS characters. Character designs like Blade, obviously, she doesn't benefit as much, but you're still getting damage percent and energy. What more could you want? Oh, and depending on the team, you're getting skill points as well. So again, Ting Yun, totally great. I don't think they're going to power crept. For the debuffers, I actually think that in most cases, and they actually do say it here, that Pella is actually for most players, Pella is more valuable and better than Silverwolf. Obviously, Silverwolf has some sauce and unique viability, with characters like Kafka being able to drop their effect hit rate requirements and being able to apply element and general damage buffing for the team. However, I do think she will be beat as a debuffer going forward. I think there will be better debuffers. Granted, the defense percent decrease is insanely strong, but I do think either she will be lower for power creep or we'll get people on par that will drop characters like Welt down even further. Not that Welt is bad necessarily, he's just not really great. Vulnerability is good, but the rest of what he provides isn't really that helpful for many teams, right? And then in terms of DOT, I guess a slight note, I don't think they're going to get power crept. I just think DOT is going to come to a screeching halt if you ever go up against something that has element resistance to that type, because then you're just going to be screwed. You won't be able to apply your DOT. That's it. You're going to have to change your team or your teammates being used, right? So yeah, I mean, all I can really say is that like if Kafka ever goes up against like if a lower Eidolon level Kafka ever goes up against a shock resistant enemy, you're kind of screwed. Unless of course you bring like a triple DOT team, right? And so that's what it is. And in terms of DPS characters, I do think that Zila will be seen worse and worse going in the future. I didn't see it at first, but I do see some of her issues at lower levels and with critting. It really depends if we ever get any like some crit supports, then she can definitely go way up, but this is mainly pertaining to her light cone. I think Kafka, as I said already, can be lowered. I do think Sashang, and I do think Sashang, Yangqing, and everyone, actually maybe not Yangqing, but Sashang and everyone else I think is going to be complete zeros in the future. Why would you even use them? Because like there's already specific setups you can do with like Clara that virtually make her immortal, and at least in Pride One's case, make her on par with Dan and Jingliu, right? Now some people are going to question, what the hell? No, this actually makes sense, but it's a very specific scenario that this can happen. But we're not going to talk about that. So yeah, that's my prediction for who's going to be power creeped. I already talked about is power creep an issue. I don't think it is because the game doesn't feel like it's going in that direction. We'll have to see for new content coming out. I already mentioned that I don't really think it's that much of an issue currently, and that I don't think it's going to happen going forward. Talking about who's going to be power crept, and yeah, I think that's it. I don't know. I just want to tell me in the comment section down below what you guys think about power creep. Again, I do think this is a conversation that it should be had. I think it's like, we're chilling right now. I don't think they're gonna release stronger units going forward for at least for a little bit, until maybe like 2.0. So like give it 3 updates before we see something that's really crazy. And so yeah, I mean that's about it. Tell me your thoughts down below. Let's have a conversation about power creep, and I'll see you guys next time.